Thanks for coming over. This is Amodeus, and today we're going to explain OGD. Now first, before we jump into this, I want to share my recruit code. It's 991C7. This has been requested by a bunch of people, and in all honesty, I didn't want to share it because I thought it was kind of weird and pushy, but I really appreciate the fact that you guys look at that as a way to support the channel. So you've convinced me it's a great way to do it because it's not costing you anything. So I appreciate that. That's very cool. But okay, on to ongoing damage. Okay, the way ongoing damage has been discussed with me over and over for the last several days is pretty easy to understand now that I have so many different sources saying the exact same thing. Now, to be fair, everybody admits there is some fudging that still goes on with boss battles, and nobody agrees on what that fudging is, whether it's 10 or 25%, but everybody agrees there's something going on there where you just take less damage with bosses, which is fine, you know, totally okay with that. But the rest of it is pretty accurate. So, ongoing damage can be broken into two main factors, the target and the champ. So OGD will at most do 2.5% of a target's max HP per second. So if you take the Steel Widow, for instance, as your target, it has an HP of 272,800 hit points. Now, the ongoing damage per second is capped based on that max HP. So if you just take that number, multiply it by 2.5, you get 6,800 basically. So no matter what, OGD can only do 6,800 per second at the most, okay? Now, once again, there's still some fudging there that goes on because he's a raid boss, but we're going to be okay at saying 6,800. Now, the second part of OGD is all about the champ, and this is where the update today impacted us. So every champ will do 300% of their total attack up to that 2.5% that we just talked about. So that means for Steel Widow, you can take the total attack of your champ and multiply it by 3 and get it as close as humanly possible to that 6,800, and you're going to do the maximum amount of damage with your OGD as possible. So the goal is always going to be to get your champ up to that 2.5% cap of max HP for your target, okay? Then you can take that number and divide it by 3 to get whatever attack rating you want to have. So for instance, I know that the max damage that we can do per tick in OGD on the Steel Widow is 6,800. If I divide that by 3, I get like 2280 or something like that. So if we take Eleanor, I have her geared at about 2,200, right? Just specifically for this video. And I'd love to show that to you, but yeah, Game Loft. I don't know what to tell you. Them and patches, man. Stuff just doesn't work. So you have to trust me on this. She's at about 2,200. If we take her into Steel Widow 10, we can see what happens. And if you watch the last video, you know immediately there's a huge difference and things are working vastly different. So I'll use the super safe team. And I actually have Manus in here because he's at about 2,000 attack as well, or maybe it's 1,800 attack. And I want to see if he's viable too, because if you're bringing him back and the siege towers back and they're all contributing at a pretty high level, I'm going to be super thrilled. I don't even at this point care what the math is. Just tell me what I got to do, right? So we're going to bring him in there and see what we can do. So as you can see in here, it is going to be exactly like what we would think would happen, old school. So you got your Archangel jumping in and punching people in the face. You got your Siege Tower Eleanor in there just running crazy all over the place. Manus is in there whipping stuff around, healing people, dropping dots, doing the buff block that he absolutely positively has to be doing. And then you have Xenia trying to strip stuff that doesn't exist. And of course you have Aaliyah the Blade Master just cleaning those waves pretty effortlessly for us. Now right here is where I think everything really starts to come together, and I've done this run like 20 times and this team hasn't failed, so I'm pretty happy about it. So right there you see that there's a cleanse. It goes across everything, and luckily now the OGD goes on. So we get up to 9 stacks, and you can see it ticking away at the top, right? Which, you know, does it do as much damage as it does before? It doesn't seem like it to me, but I will say that I'm very happy with the scalability as long as it stays true once you get to the Ascended dungeons. And then once again, the downside is that cleanse, right? It can wipe them all off. So I actually build Eleanor on Adept specifically for that reason, because I have every faith that every time I drop dots, it's going to get wiped off and I'm going to have to do it again. But that's a nice part about having Amodeus in there as a backup as well, especially since it appears that OGD damage overall is back to a pretty relative spot to where it was before. But we can see that in the damage, right? Now Eleanor is going to have done more damage, because underrated actually is the fact that they're doing damage with their main skills too a lot, because now Eleanor has 2,000 some odd damage, Amodeus is at 2,000 some odd damage, and they're actually getting in there. And of course, there you go, you have it. You know, a minute and 14 for dots. You know, some of those were on minions, so it's not really a big deal. But overall, I mean, look at that damage, like 213,000. I think that's a lot better than where it was previously. So I feel pretty confident in that. And then, of course, the team itself, which was not viable yesterday, suddenly is viable and incredibly stable, because even though it runs a little bit longer than I would want it to, it still very consistently delivers on what it's supposed to. And the downtime is really negligible. I think they're all working well together, because this is a pretty standard old school team. Now you could switch out your Eleanor, drop another Amodeus in there, switch out the Archangel, throw something else in there. I mean, you could do all of these things, right? Because now you're really replacing like units, because the tanking ability of Eleanor or any of the siege towers is less than it was before, because you can't just go HP on everything. And that's fine, because now I think that they're a little bit more in line with the way that everything else works. Now, of course, I would love for them to be like total like laser on purpose, you know, like just melting bosses left and right. But that wouldn't be fun after a while, let's be honest. But them just working correctly, there being a much more definitive explanation as far as how much damage it's going to be doing, it being more in line with what we would expect it to do, especially like the contribution level I would expect from like a 5-star, is really huge. Now that cleanse that wipes out all those ongoing damage debuffs is still something you have to deal with. Because I know, like, with the siege towers now, you could probably go mortal, or not mortal, you could probably go brutal and get a lot of benefit. But I went adept precise on them, just like I did before, and then just got up to that cap. So I'm interested to see what you guys have found out from this new update. 300% cap on champion damage, pretty huge deal. But what are you seeing? Are you still struggling, or are there things that you're looking for, things that you want to get your hands on, or questions that you have? By all means, reach out. I won't have the answers, but man, I'm more than willing to make enough mistakes that somebody's going to come in and explain it correctly to me. All right, thanks for watching the videos. Have a great day. Bye.